What up? I'm B, and welcome to my channel where we talk about all things true crime and current events. Today is another episode of Crafty Crimes where you and I sit down together, we talk about something going on in the true crime world, and we do a little crocheting at the same time. I don't know about you, but when I think about human trafficking, the first thing that comes to mind is the movie Taken, where the young girl gets abducted, she's in another country, they take her to different cities, different states. You think about people being moved on a mass scale, and that's definitely part of it. Human trafficking is a huge problem. It is a worldwide issue. It's a $150 billion industry, and there are an estimated 20 to 40 million victims worldwide, which is absolutely insane. And on top of that, only 0.04% of survivors have their cases identified or investigated. And this is an especially big concern for women because approximately 71% of victims are believed to be female, and additionally 40% of survivors are Black. And so like I said, when you first think of human trafficking or trafficking in general, you're likely to think of that big scale, massive, organized crime, criminal empire, stuff like that. But it also happens on a much more local scale. And it can happen in ways that we don't even really understand or we don't recognize that are forms of trafficking. Because there's a subset of human trafficking called sex trafficking. And sex trafficking is a specific form of human trafficking that occurs when someone uses force, fraud, or coercion to cause a commercial sex act with an adult or causes a minor to commit a commercial sex act. And a commercial sex act would be prostitution, participating in pornography, or any sexual performance done in exchange for money, drugs, or another item of value. It can even be in exchange for food or shelter or clothing. And something really scary is that it's most common for victims to experience sex trafficking for the first time between the ages of 14 and 16. So today we're going to be talking about a case that is currently being investigated, something that is going on literally right now that involves sex trafficking. And we're going to be talking about a man named Jason Roger Pope. So, good old Jason. He is a 42-year-old DJ. He lives in Florence, South Carolina, and his stage name is DJ Kid, which is disturbing when we get into some of the crimes that he has been convicted of and is currently being investigated for. So we don't know a ton about Jason's childhood. The first kind of public record there is on him comes from 1995. At the time, Jason was 18 years old and he was arrested and convicted of impersonating a police officer. And when we hear that, it's kind of just like, okay, you were 18, you were doing something dumb, we don't know the full story, fine. You were young, you were dumb, whatever, we'll give it a pass. However, the following year, in 1996, he was arrested and convicted of promoting prostitution with a minor. So he was supposed to serve jail time for this sentence, but it ended up being suspended. And what that means is sometimes when you are convicted of a crime, the judge will say that he'll put off your sentence so that you can complete community service hours. If you're going to be on probation for a little bit, for whatever reason, they're going to let you stay out of jail. They're going to push off your sentence. And then if you behave well in that interim time, a lot of times they'll say, okay, that fulfills your sentence. You don't need to go to jail anymore. And that's exactly what happened, which is astounding to me because in South Carolina, promoting the prostitution of a minor is a felony offense, and you can serve up to 10 years in jail for it and be forced to pay a $5,000 fine. Additionally, you will have to go on the registry as a sex offender. So what I just really don't understand is how someone can be convicted of a felony, especially one of that nature, and not have to go to jail. How on earth do you get out of serving jail time? I have a theory. So because of the age of a lot of Jason's survivors, they're under the age of 18, which means that the state, the police department, the media, they all have a responsibility not to identify these young women because they are not adults. They are protected from having their personal information shared. However, Jason has bragged on Facebook about being with a lot of Black women. If you look on his Facebook page, there's a lot of his friends are Black, a lot of the pictures of girls. He has tons of pictures with girls. A lot of them look very young. And almost all of them, all the ones that I saw, were him with Black women. So it's not far-fetched to believe that his victims are most likely Black. That seems to be his preference in general, like his dating preference or his romantic preference is Black women, and he has pictures with a lot of young girls. So it's not that much of a reach. And the reason I think that this may have impacted his sentence was because there's this theory called the less dead. And if you watched my video on Samuel Little, we talked about it a little bit, but kind of a brief overview is that when it comes to crimes and how the public perceives them and how much interest like the police department will put into solving them and investigating them, there are a group of people who fall under the category of less dead, which means in theory, these people are not as valuable to society. So if they die, they die. You know, it's not a huge deal, you know, because we don't value them as much, is basically what less dead means. And people who typically fall under this category are people who are addicted to drugs, people who have mental disabilities, and Black people, and people who work, people who do sex work. So not only do you likely have a victim who was Black, you are also in South Carolina, which does not have the best track record of giving justice to people who are not white. And in a lot of sex trafficking cases, officers will see the survivors, like the victims who are being forced into this, and they'll just write them off as a prostitute. They'll say like, oh, well, they accepted money for services. They're prostitutes. They're not, you know, they're not an innocent person in this, which is just horrifying. But that's my theory. I could be completely wrong. There could have been a completely different reason that he didn't have to go to jail, but I don't know. I read a lot of true crime stuff, and that's what I'm thinking. So anyway, we have that crime in 1996, and then between 1997 and 2011, he stays out of trouble in terms of sex crimes, but he is convicted of multiple other, like, smaller charges, such as like disorderly conduct and unlawful use of a telephone, which that could be anything from calling somebody and refusing to hang up so that way you interfere with their service, all the way to calling somebody, trying to like coerce them into something by threatening them with violence or being really aggressive towards them. So who knows what he was actually doing in those years, but he didn't completely stay out of trouble with the law. Then in December of 2011, two young girls, they were ages 13 and 16 at the time. They went to their local hospital to be seen by doctors because they had both had unprotected sex with Jason, who was 34 at the time. Basically, they were like, you know, he gave us money in exchange for this, and he also gave us marijuana. So, you know, of course, that's a crime. But the real reason that deputies ended up getting involved was because Jason has AIDS, and they had unprotected sex with him. And that is, of course, a crime. To have AIDS, to have an STD, or any other type of, you know, contagious either illness, infection, whatever, and have unprotected sex, like intentionally expose somebody to that and not tell them. That's a crime. So the police got involved. They took their statements, but according to what was reported, nothing else came of it. Awful. Don't know why he didn't go to jail for that, but later that month, another police report was filed against Jason. He was harassing an adult woman, and he was sending her pornographic text messages. So she reported it to the police, but again, there's not any information on how that complaint was resolved. And then we don't have any police reports for the next few years. For about 6 years, it's pretty quiet. But in December of 2017, a 16-year-old girl. She ended up calling the police, and she was having a really tough time. She was suicidal, and she wanted to report her experience, and she was just, God, I can't even imagine how that would feel. But she was having a tough time. She called the police, and she told the police that she had been having sex with Jason because he was paying her. And it happened a few times, and then she no longer wanted to engage in that type of relationship with him, but he started blackmailing her into additional sex acts. And so for a little bit, she was like, okay, well, I guess, he's blackmailing me, so I have to do this. And then eventually she got sick of it and decided to cut Jason off and stop talking to him completely, just like wall him out. And he ended up posting a bunch of personal information about her on social media. So obviously it was information she didn't want shared, and she didn't know what to do. And so that's why she called the police. Not only had he done these things to her, he was also having sex with underage girls by promoting his DJ events. Like, he would hand out flyers and tickets and stuff, and then he would use that to bribe them into sex, and he would also film the encounters, which, child pornography depending on the age of these girls. So now we're heating up, because 6 months after that, a woman called the police, and she said that Jason had been in contact with her daughter, who was 15, and the contact was of sexual nature and it was inappropriate. And she also said that Jason had been luring other young girls into relationships with him through Facebook and Snapchat. Basically the same way that that first girl had explained the situation, saying like he would post tickets, giveaways, stuff like that in order to get in contact with these young girls. And then a few days after that, a family member of Jason, she was a young lady, she went to the police and told them that Jason was having sex with minors, that some of the minors he was having sex with were her friends, and that Jason had also sent her sexually explicit text messages, and he had grabbed her bottom on multiple occasions. So in 2018, he was convicted of cruelty to children, but he didn't have to go to jail for any additional time. His sentence was time served. So basically, when you are being tried and convicted of something, if you're not out on bond, they hold you in jail. And in certain cases, after you're convicted, depending on what the crime is, they'll say, okay, well, you had to be in jail for however many weeks or months, and that can just count as your time. You're good to go. Which again, for these types of crimes, I do not understand, and I don't think I will ever understand. This year, in July of 2019, authorities learned that Jason had solicited commercial sex acts from a 17-year-old girl, and he gave her money in exchange for this, as well as a few other items of value. And so on August 29th of this year, he was arrested for that. And then in September, they also learned about another 16-year-old who Jason was accused of sexually assaulting and giving her money afterwards to keep her quiet. So currently, Jason is in jail. He is being held there awaiting his trial. And originally, his lawyer was going to ask for him to be released on bond, but in October, for some reason, they withdrew that request. So he's going to be in there while he waits for his trial. And currently, the South Carolina District Attorney's Office, they're the ones who are investigating everything, all the charges leveled against him. And so far, here's what they've charged him with. 3 counts of trafficking, 3 counts of first-degree criminal sexual conduct, 1 count of second-degree criminal sexual conduct with a minor, promoting prostitution, and kidnapping. And so here's the thing that we didn't really hear about a ton. Some of these young girls may have been held against their will at Jason's house. Apparently, some neighbors had reported seeing young girls go into his house and then stay there for a while. Like, one of his neighbors was being interviewed, and he said, seeing who he had next door, these young girls, they looked like they were very young, underage maybe, and they stayed there some, and then they would disappear. Which, what? Like, 99% of the time, I'm like, mind your business, like, stay in your lane. But when you know your neighbors like that, and you see some shady stuff going down, it's like, just ask them what's up. Be like, hey, who are those girls? Why are they at your house? You're a full-grown man. Why do you have these young girls here? Where are they? Where are they going? What are they doing? But that's just me. So there may have been some girls held against their will, and the police definitely think that there are more girls who have been either assaulted by him or coerced into committing sex acts. And so SLED, which is the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, they're asking people if they have any knowledge of these crimes or if they themselves have had an encounter with Jason to please give them a call. And I will put their phone number in a highlighted or in a pinned comment. I'll put it down below, because if you're in South Carolina and you know anything about this, definitely give them a call. Give them as much as you can that is truthful, so that way they can get this guy finally put away. But that's all that we know as of now. Like I said, he is awaiting trial, so hopefully that'll happen within the next few months. Sometimes it can take a little bit longer to actually get to trial and get a conviction, but hopefully that'll happen soon. And if you would like an update on this case after that happens, definitely leave it in a comment below. Let me know. And while you're doing that, if you wouldn't mind, tell me which type of video you like better. If you like videos like this, where it's something that is very current, very fresh, you know, we don't have all the details, but it's happening right now, or if you prefer kind of like longer stories where we have a lot of detail and maybe they're a little bit more well known, so more people have covered them, but you just find it interesting, like you want notorious crimes or current crimes? Let me know so that way I can make the content that you want to watch. Also, I would love it so much if you would consider liking this video or subscribing to my channel. And if you've subscribed already, thank you so much. I love being able to just sit here, hang out, and talk about whatever, and it really means a lot to me that you're here, so I appreciate you. With all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to go out there and be the voice of reason in a world full of crazy. Bye.